I'm Larry Cormichael, one of the co-leaders of our Greater Des Moines Community of Practice, and it is a great pleasure to have the team from Hy-Vee Construction present on one of their projects in Missouri and share some of their lean practices so that all of us as practitioners can learn something new this morning. With no further announcements, I'm going to turn this over to Josh with Hy-Vee Construction. Josh, the presentation is yours.
Well, thank you, Larry. I appreciate the opportunity to present to the group. As much as everybody would like it, I'm sure that a field trip down to Springfield in Missouri is not in everyone's budget. So I appreciate you letting us present virtually to you on the Springfield 2 and Springfield 2 Fast and Fresh projects. So we'll start with some introductions. They were sent out, but we'll start with Erin.
Hi, my name is Erin Hiscox. I'm a project engineer with Hy-Vee Construction, and I've been with this company for 13 years.
Hi, my name is Pat O'Neill. I've been with Hy-Vee Construction for 12 years. I started out as a lead carpenter. 2006, got turned out to a project superintendent. Currently working on the Springfield, Missouri.
And then finally, I'm Joshua Thrapp, the project manager for these projects. I've been with the company for 18 years, done lots of things with LCI, build lots of different kinds of buildings. In the bio that I sent over, I must have misspelled food production and wrote food prosecution. And Matt Roth and I were emailing back and forth, and he made a nice meme of what it might look like if I was a food prosecutor. And I thought that was funny. And if we can't laugh about things, then, part of that's why we do our jobs, is to have fun. I'm going to start out with, instead of doing a long lean bio, our company has a quick video that's out on our website that I thought I'd just play for everyone. It's about a minute and a half, and it kind of just goes over why we do lean as a company.
Hy-Vee is a major grocery retailer currently in 8 states in the Midwest, with a mission of making lives easier, healthier, happier. Hy-Vee Construction and A+ Communication are formed to provide a higher degree of service. Hy-Vee Construction believes in the hedgehog concept, as introduced in the book, Good to Great. Our passion is to take care of the customers. We strive to become the best in the world at retail construction through the use of lean practices. We are training to recognize and eliminate the 8 forms of waste. Years ago, Ron Pearson, the president and CEO of Hy-Vee at the time, challenged Hy-Vee to build stores faster, better, and cheaper than the competition. It is a common assumption that you can have 2 of these at the expense of the other. At Hy-Vee Construction, we feel that with our tools to eliminate waste, we can achieve all 3. Our economic denominator is cost savings. We attack cost from design to opening and return the savings to Hy-Vee shoppers. Hy-Vee Construction works outside the boundaries of traditional construction practices by involving the workers in planning, gaining their trust, and learning from real-time performance data. Workflow reliability is key, and Hy-Vee Construction has the tools to eliminate waste and maximize value for our customers. Hy-Vee Construction's relentless pursuit of becoming faster, better, and cheaper allows us to work as one with Hy-Vee with the mission of making lives easier, healthier, happier.
So I thought that was a good intro to why Hy-Vee Construction has started lean, been doing lean, continuing to learn lean practices, and trying to improve at all levels. The project, like I mentioned, is in Springfield, Missouri, which is in southern Missouri. It's titled Springfield No. 2 because it's the second store that will be in Springfield. The project started, it was a 10.5-acre site in the center of town, right on a major highway through town, surrounded by residential. And as you can imagine, with an established residential neighborhood, if you come in and take down trees, whether they're really nice trees or they're scrub trees that's been one of our first opportunities that we incurred when we took down all of the trees to start building the project. On that 10.5-acre site, we're going to put a 95,000 square foot store and a 5,000 square foot gas station, which we're calling Fast and Fresh at the time. So you can see that's a lot to cram into a small site that's surrounded by residential neighborhoods. Springfield 2 is the third of the first 3 flagships of this style. This is a picture of the Grimes store. The Grimes store opens today, and I encourage all of you to go out and see it and spend some money. It is definitely something that will open your eyes and take your breath away, and is different than any other grocery store in the Midwest, and frankly different than anyone I've ever seen before. And the Springfield one is going to be similar to it, but it was behind this one and another one that's in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So we were able to learn from some of the things that they did, because this is, like I said, the very brand new design that we'd never done before. So as lean practitioners, we all know about the plan, do, checked, and act, and we're calling it adjust cycle of continuous improvement, where you set a standard and you plan, work, do it, check it, and then make adjustments or act upon what you've learned to continuously get better. So the title of this presentation is Planning, Doing, Checking, and Adjusting on the project. And I hope by the end you'll see how we used each of these tools to continually get better on not just this project, but on other projects in the future. Every single one of us has gone through the pandemic in some fashion. And this project, having started at the beginning of this year, was kind of, COVID was still pretty prevalent. And starting a project without having the daily planning boards and the weekly planning boards posed a opportunity for us to think differently. As a company, it was affecting all of our jobs. So we said, you know what are we going to do? What program can help us out? Because you can't have people all crammed into the tight space. Using a board like this, where you got to use markers and sticky notes that are being filled out, may not be a thing. We don't know. It led us as a company to a program called MIRO, which is a computer program that works like a whiteboard database that anybody from anywhere can get into, and you can really collaborate in real time. And it allowed us to reproduce our boards digitally with each of the different sections, and have sticky notes that people could fill out. So it offered us an opportunity to do our weekly work plans virtually. But additionally, how are you going to have a pull plan and have that kind of a discussion? And so with that, we proceeded to try our very first pull plan virtually in MIRO. And I'll let Pat talk about how that experience went.
So as some of the processes that we do is, first of all, we all used to gather in a room and go around the room and take attendance and just kind of mingle and get to know people before the poll plan started. We understood that, we were not going to be able to do this. So in MIRO, we created a board that was an introduction board with all of our trade partners, PMs, subcontractor, lead foreman, everybody in attendance. Then on the lower portion, we asked each individual that was partaking in this meeting with us just some of their likes and some of their off work time hobbies or sports that they like to do in their free time. It kind of was an icebreaker. Got to know and understand that person, even though they were on a Zoom call far distances away or right next door. So this was our first poll plan. Again, we used to do, we went from, okay, we're in one big room with a dedicated wall with maybe a piece of paper or a whiteboard or some sort of physical structure in front of us that we were collecting this information on. So once again, we found ourselves not struggling, but understanding that the board could offer a platform to do a poll session on. So as you see here, this was our first one, and it was for our exteriors. As you can see off to the right, we used some of the conceptual photos that we were privy to before construction started. And then right next to that, you see some of the photos that came from Grimes. We were fortunate enough to add those photos on this board, and that way we could kind of understand, and it gave us a real understanding of some of the walls and exteriors that we were going to be walking through today. And on the bottom and the side above the other conceptual photos, you see where we had highlighted as we went around the building. With this, it helped us, Hy-Vee Construction, understand exactly the areas that we wanted to focus on and some of the areas that we understood that needed to go first to get the detail that we were looking for. So it was a very helpful tool in logging the information that you see in the center. This was an interaction between Josh and I. Everybody that was invited to the meeting that you've seen on the attendance was able to see this and also participate if they had the understanding and tech savvy enough to fill out their Post-it notes and place them where they should. Somewhat like almost exactly like we used to do on a physical wall or a piece of paper.
I guess just to interject in that, the other benefit of highlighting it really allowed us to label out all the different layers of the building. Like we said before, this is a very brand new prototype for Hy-Vee. We had the benefit of Grimes to see all the different layers of the building, but then we could also highlight that and allow people, the different trades that were doing each item, to be able to focus on and be participants in those conversations. And as we found out in Grimes, there's a lot of detailing that's involved to make sure that all those layers work together. And this conversation allowed us to focus in on it a little bit better.
So this is an example of one portion of the MIRO board. These are individual boards. As you can see, they're all labeled as a particular portion of the job, site, structural, site utilities, etc. So as we get into our meetings on Wednesday, we go to each board and each sub and collect that information, whether it be milestone phasing or week 1, week 2.
So this is zoomed into one of the boards, and like we talked about, that the old board, now you can see them kind of side by side, how we have the different layers, and Pat will kind of talk about how the different layers work and how the participation works.
Thanks, Josh. The board that you see to the left that we showed you in an earlier frame was what we all knew and what we used, and it was a great tool. With this board, we always offered up and encouraged group participation to come up and move magnets or make the physical commitment at the board. Well, like most of our lives, when COVID hit, we were stuck with understanding that we really couldn't have that interaction anymore. So it was a little bit of a struggle at first. Our work kept going, and we knew that we needed to gain this information and log it into a board. So, we tried several different things. When we first got introduced to Zoom, there was a learning curve trying to get, our board to the left there up to the screen where everybody that we invited to a Zoom call to be able to see what was on the board as we were changing the information in real time. It was a real struggle. A couple of the other things, when it came to Zoom and doing these remote meetings was, internet, the right hardware, everything that goes along with trying to gather people on an internet-based app such as Zoom. So as we move to the MIRO boards, as you can see, they resemble each other. So they were formatted as a mirror image of what you see on the left. And this board actually allows any participant that is invited to MIRO board by one of the creators of the board, they can be invited as a co-editor. So they can, as you can see, the rows of, they're referred to as sticky notes. They can go and click on them, add their tasks, add their subcontractor name, and then also fill out how many days it's going to take them. The group participation we found was still there. There still is a lot of learning curve with trying to get everybody to understand and use it remotely. So a breakdown of these boards, this is the milestone schedule. So we went through the poll session. We had already generated a generic schedule. We went through the poll sessions. We updated it. A lot of the milestones that we identify weekly on our 6-week schedule and our master schedule are put on this portion of the board. We also I encourage each subcontractor, lead foreman, or project manager to maybe identify some of the things that they consider milestones. We have it in our head what we want to see and where we want to be at a certain date, but maybe we're overlooking something. So we offer up this information to each subcontractor foreman to provide a milestone phasing schedule. So this is just a further breakdown of the milestone schedule. We're all familiar with this. Basically, we're taking one milestone and backing off and just splitting it up in durations. Further down the chart is week 1, week 2. So it's meeting time. My meetings are 10 o'clock on Wednesday. We are at this point we're kind of hybrid. Some of the guys show up that I work with on day to day, and some are remotely. So we examine week 1. This, along with our daily stand-ups, we are doing our checks and balances and making sure that everybody is on track with this week, with the plan that was put in place last week. Along with week 2, we're planning out next week's work. Then it comes Friday. I'm going back into this board and I'm doing my yes, buts. And if it's a no, I'm filling in our reason and our variance and filling in our category. Then from here, this information is transferred, which I want to let Aaron walk us through that real quick. Aaron?
So I'm going to talk today about the mechanics of MIRO. When we created the board, obviously it was a new system for us. We hadn't really heard about MIRO. We didn't know the bells and whistles. So I wanted to see what else MIRO could do to kind of make our jobs a little bit easier. And so I'm going to show you how we have eliminated the need of double entry into our blast planner system out of the box forms, the weekly work plan. On Friday, he'll go through his work and reconcile his yes, buts, no's. He'll also track any reason or variance for a yes, but, or no. And we then export that information into a document that we've created in Google Sheets. So MIRO has the ability to export information in what's called a frame. So you export to CSV or Excel as highlighted here. And from here, all of the information in the week 1 will be transferred to an Excel document. It doesn't always do it perfectly, but it's a really great start from having to double enter everything. So here just kind of gives you the ability to change anything that you might need to change as far as formatting. And from here in Excel, you can copy and paste this into Google Sheets. Now, this Google Sheet document is going to look almost identical to the last planner system out of the box weekly work plan. We've kind of manipulated the document a smidge to kind of fit our needs. We've created drop-down menus for subcontractor names. If you do want to manual enter this, we still have the ability to track our PPC on a weekly basis, as well as our categories on a weekly basis. And then over on the far right, we have the ability to track our subcontractor PPC on a weekly and then also a project basis. And that just allows us to identify any opportunities that we might have to improve. So all of the information in the Google Sheets document that's actually embedded into the MIRO planning board, we also create charts from that information that are automatically updated. Here you see the PPC chart with our 85% marker line that we try to hit each week. We also track variance data that's automatically updated in the MIRO board for all to see and review during the meeting. We also have a constraint log to help identify any constraints that might actually be taking place on the job. Once again, this is also embedded into the MIRO board. So when they're planning each week, they can see the status of constraints that they might have on this project. And so we've actually tried this on a few projects, a few model line projects. And what this has allowed us to do is kind of take it one step further. Anytime we've ever tried to do any company-wide metrics for the last planner system, we've actually had to do them by hand. And what using Miro and Google Docs or Google Sheets has allowed us to do is get company PPC variance data updated automatically on a weekly basis as soon as it's been entered into the Google Sheet document. Now, this isn't for every single Hy-Vee construction project. It is only for the ones that are on our model line until we kind of work out some of the kinks and roll it out company-wide. But here you're able to see where our company is PPC-wise, 83%. And then you can also see each individual model line project down at the bottom, what their project PPC is. We also are able to track variances company-wide, which is something that we've always had to do, by hand or re-entering from one Excel spreadsheet to another. With Google Sheets, it allows us to collect all of this data from multiple spreadsheets and provide real-time data on our metrics.
Thank you, Aaron. So we've talked about the planning and the some of the checking. We're going to get to the adjusting, and we like to call anything that's a difficulty or frustration and opportunity. I'm titling this section Opportunities to Adjust. The project started grading in February. It was a very wet February and March. The roof got ordered, steel was going up, and in May we were notified that the roof was pushed back 3 months from our delivery date of June. Anyone that's worked in retail understands that opening dates are set well in advance, and so pushing off a roof delivery has ramifications and domino effects throughout the building. So we decided to get together and talk about what it impacted, what we could still do. And so we had another pull plan that I'll let Pat talk about.
This pull plan was modeled after a course schedule that was generated in January. As you can see, the highlighted areas start in the left-hand corner, and we work clockwise around the building. So going into this pull plan, we had it in our head, just pre-pull plan conversations between Josh, Aaron, and I. We understood that, we could probably more than likely get quite a ways until we run into some of the more weather sensitive applications or installations like sheetrock and insulation and some of the finishes, taping, mudding, and so on. So we created a board that we could log this information per department, as you see, backroom, mezzanine, meat, seafood, so on, so forth. So it was a great tool, as Josh was remotely, and so was I. Once again, we invited all the main players to this pull plan, and they offered up the information. A lot of times we want the interaction, but due to COVID, we were restricted in that. So it was a real good tool, being in 2 different states and still viewing and cataloging the information.
Before I go to the exciting part, the pictures, I was thinking about it. So our roof was originally supposed to arrive in June. We had this meeting when we found out in May, and that was based on the roof getting pushed 3 months. So it was going to be coming to us at the end of July. Behind that story, it got pushed another 2 times. This is an ongoing conversation that I think you'll really see.
And to add to that, Josh, we after we did this pull plan, we had was told some other delays in some other areas of the building, which we'll touch on now that we're going through the pictures. So one thing we knew in our head that, hey, we can start our interior framing in departments, go as far as we can, as long as the concrete's underneath our wheels, we can keep rolling. So that we did. But we got so far to where we understood that we were, as we were doing the overhead, we knew that we were causing a roadblock with some of the topping out in areas above some of the mechanical that was installed. As you see here, this is probably a more mild situation, but once we recognized this and had further conversations and opportunities to adjust, we moved to use an MIRO board in all the top out areas and even get it taped for above ceiling. So these two pictures here, the one on the left, obviously is the HVAC spiral duct. So we knew that we were going to be able to move forward with the spiral. One thing, in our pre-construction or pre-pull plan conversations was, okay, yeah, we're not going to have any issues with the duct going up or doing anything like that. But then we overlooked, the insulated interior part of the duct and closing it off for any dust and dirt too. We were not only going to take, all of our duct and stage it on the floor, which was going to have to be covered as you see in the picture, but also once it got installed overhead, we were going to have to cover it one more time and make sure that, all moisture did not. We have been notified that we were not going to get a roof anytime soon. One thing that, several things, but one of them, we were not entertaining stopping any of the deliveries. First one that we were faced with was some of the big rooftop units, the refrigeration units and big seasons 4 and all the department RTUs that were scheduled to deliver. We were not okay with setting them on the ground, and we were not okay with pushing the deliveries out. So we got with our roofer and were able to put enough material together and flashing and get the curbs ready for the units to set, as you see here. The picture on the left is our seasons 4, and then the other one is a curb waiting for a unit to be set.
I don't know how many of you have ever installed rooftop equipment without a roof, but it was definitely a first for me.
So these two pictures are two other opportunities that we knew we needed to have further conversation with. So what you're seeing is a temp roof installation, just an ice and dam material in just one area of the building. So the area that you're seeing below this is our mechanical mezzanine. And on our mechanical mezzanine, we have our switch gear with our main distribution and several sub panels. We have the backup generator, which is in the same area. We have 2 refrigeration racks. All these are obviously moisture sensitive pieces of equipment. So we opted to do a temp roof in these areas and dry that area in, due to the fact that all this equipment has to be loaded in this area prior to some of the walls that needed to be built, as we seen in the first picture.
And some of you might ask, okay, well, if this temp roof was an option, why didn't you just temp the entire thing and then proceed with your drywall and finishes? First of all, we'd never used the product before, and we're a little leery. And second of all, it was pretty cost prohibitive to do over the entire building square footage. It did allow us to, make a strategic move to cover an area that we couldn't move forward on without some additional protection.
These two photos just demonstrate some of the precautionary coverings that we put in place. The left one, as you see, is a refrigeration rack. This one here particularly is on the sales floor, and every morning and every night the refrigeration guy covers and uncovers it so he can obviously make his connections out the top. Some of the electronics, as you can see, that are covered up right there. Some of the other challenges or opportunities that we were faced with was cooler delivery. This was after our full plan for the roof. We were notified that our coolers were also going to be delayed for some of the same reasons that the roofing and the materials of the roofing were going to be delayed. As we are today, current time, these are 2 areas that identify, as you can see, the lines in the floors and the frost breaks. They identify where 2 cooler freezer combos are to be placed and then are missing at this time. So the picture on the left is our kitchen. You see the walls that are off to the left and to the back right there are walls that back up to the freezer cooler combo. So we had to really be into the details and make sure that we're operating and laying out off the correct shop drawings to place these walls. The one on the right here is the bakery freezer combo. Once again, we built up to it on both sides and are waiting, which we were supposed to get the delivery today, and it's also pushed back another week. So without receiving our cooler boxes and the continual emails that we get for them being pushed back, one thing that it has caused is kind of a bottleneck of materials and equipment that are arriving on site. Like I mentioned earlier, what we didn't want to do was push back any of our deliveries for reasons of, somebody getting lost in the shuffle, storage, so on and so forth. So we've been taking the deliveries, and the two photos that you see right here are the components for the coolers. The picture on the left are the hanging coils that are within the coolers that we've had to catalog and store and protect and move several times so we can continue with some of the work around it. Picture to the right are the doors, which are now able to be installed along with the glass that you see next to it and some of the shelving, which, once again, these are just photos of some of the material that we've had to store on site, and causes a little bit of a logistics constraint, along with some of the containers, as you see in the picture on the left, that we provided and keep adding. For instance, one of them containers contains all of our dry fall because we hear that there was going to be a shortage. So we bought up and we stored it and we put it away for when we need it. So these two pictures are just some current status of the project. As you can see on the left, we're working through the finishes of the exterior facades where we got the exterior sheeted. We are starting the curtain wall installation today. We're moving around the building with brick and doing our final measurements for ACM tactile and our order for Nichihan. On the right is just a front elevation. These were both taken this week. As you can see, we're still in the dirt, pushing, trying to get enclosed before winter. Lastly, so the C-Storm, as Josh said earlier and showed the layout, this is a 10.5 acre site, and on this site is also a C-Store, which is branded Fast and Fresh. Some of these constraints and opportunities, as we refer, we ran into also with the Fast and Fresh. One being the roofing, also the cooler. With the roofing, we were able to put enough material together in order to do this smaller formatted roof to get in the dry and be able to move forward, keep our opening date on schedule.
So to add to that, I mean, Pat talks about putting it together. Literally, this was put together from multiple pieces and parts. And at the time that we were putting together, and this is a 5,000 square foot building worth of roofing, was the time that we found out that our main roof was also, we had the material coming, but they couldn't find any screws or plates for attaching the roof. And the dates that we were being given were January. At that time, we reached out to many of our partners throughout all the different states that we're operating in, and were able to gather enough to be able to put this roof together and for the other roof. But there was about a month period of time where we were going to get a roof and all the insulation, but weren't going to be able to install it, which, yes, it causes frustration, but it offers opportunities to think differently about how you put things together. I did add this slide to kind of put it in perspective. Gas stations aren't that big, and our cooler still has not arrived. It's supposed to arrive next week, but this whole section of the building you can't really build out until the cooler arrives. Opportunity-wise, it has given us kind of a laydown area where you can keep the rest of the store going, but the walls attached to it and go up to deck. And in that, cooler manufacturing has lots of opportunities. This one's actually going to be built from pieces and parts from multiple coolers that we could find and kind of custom built just to facilitate the opening date, which is 3 months ahead of the store. One thing we didn't really talk about on the site, anybody that's doing gas tanks or large fiberglass tanks for any sort of building, they were also in the delay. We actually gave up our tanks for another project that opened prior to us that wasn't going to get tanks until November. We just got our tanks last month, but on a gas station, that's a significant portion of the underground work. And in Missouri, there's rock, so making sure that you have enough room for excavating and getting that in and not impacting the C-store build itself was an opportunity that we've worked through, but it has all arrived. We have other locations that the tanks are months away. So as we've talked about the planning of the work with the weekly work plans and the pull plans, actually doing the work with pictures of progress that's going on, checking the work with our charts, showing where the constraints are, showing what opportunities there are with the different categories that we're tracking, gives us opportunities to go to subcontractors and adjust. Maybe it's communication, maybe it's a definition of the work area, maybe it's not an understanding of other things, but it allows us to continually improve and adjust. We've talked a lot about the roof. Our roof actually did just arrive, and we're getting started with it, which is a huge relief in many ways. What that did is allowed us to say, okay, now that we have the roof and we actually have it in our hands as it's getting installed, now we can have another pull plan to talk about the finishes, because we've never been at a place where we have all the walls framed ready for drywall to be able to drywall a whole building at one time. We're very used to we got it framed, we did some roughing, now we start drywall and kind of doing that kind of a pace or attack time with every single department. Again, we have the opportunity to think a little bit differently about how we build a building, how we put it together. And that pull plan is scheduled for next Tuesday to have the discussion with the subcontractors and say, okay, here's our opportunity, here's where we're at. How do we build it the most efficiently and work together? And Pat, he had an instance where with our roofing where it's at, they were able to coordinate the drywall to start delivering as soon as the roofing was done and enough in an area to get started on the offices. So it is a continuous communication with all the trades, everyone that's involved, and truly being a partner together. And with that, we did leave some time for some questions for anybody that might have some.
Just feel free to unmute yourself and ask Josh and his team any questions you have about their many lean tools, maybe possibly the virtual poll plan boards.
I guess I'm going to interject this. I'm sure every single one of you has had similar opportunities, whether it's with roofing, whether it's with some other insulated material. And if anybody wants to share something that they did, obviously we shared what things we did as it happened. As we as an industry go into the upcoming year, it's affecting how we order, when we order, how we look ahead on things. So I think I saw Nate unmute. Did you have something to ask, Nate?
Yeah, quick question for you, Josh. Do you think you're going to stick with the virtual model for the pull plan sessions, or are you going to go back to in-person and whiteboarding?
Great question. I think it's going to be a little bit of both. I think there's a huge benefit to having people there and being able to see them. I'll let Pat talk to that part again. But for me personally, I think some aspect of digital or Zoom has really made it possible for me as a project manager who has 8 different jobs to be able to attend the meetings more regularly than I would have and get more out of it visually than I would just listening on the phone. So I would guess there's going to be some sort of hybrid as we move forward.
So just to echo what Josh said, we are finding that we are getting a lot more participation from the project managers who a lot of times are behind a desk and it's hard for them to sacrifice an hour and a half or even further if they're out of state. We found that we're getting some good participation with project managers, which, from a superintendent standpoint, we want the project manager to be a part of it and to support the commitments or be a part of the commitments that are logged on either the week 1, week 2 milestone, full plan, whatever it is. Without the project manager's support, sometimes the commitments that are logged by just a foreman sometimes don't follow through. As Josh mentioned, though, me and Josh, the communication, and even Aaron, Josh being in Des Moines a lot, he's able to tune into a lot of these meetings remotely and be able to get the information to know what's going on.
And I guess to add to that, so the foremen feeling supported by their project managers and the project managers and foremen being able to get into it. So let's say the meetings are on Wednesdays, but Friday they can get in and look at what was talked about and add additional detail if they need to. And you can see people remotely getting in and adding sticky notes or clarification as the week goes on, which really helps in the communication and making it more useful for everyone.
Josh, there's been a question pop up in the chat box. Can you view that and answer it?
Sure. Would you tell us again the name of the software? So Chuck did answer, it's MIRO. It is a subscription type thing where you, similar to most programs where you certain amount, I think we have 5 users that we pay for currently. You can invite anybody who isn't on your team to look at it. They just don't have full editability. I could invite every single one of you to the MIRO board to look at it right now if you wanted.
There's a question there about how does this calculate PPC? I think they're referring to the MIRO system.
The PPC, it's taking those X's that we showed in the chart and translating them, as Aaron said, to Excel. And so then Excel is doing the calculation for us.
Okay.
We used to be able, or we're used to on our boards that were handwritten, guys would have to go around and type up every single commitment in the different boards in the different offices. This allowed them to be able to copy and paste it into their Excel, because Excel is what we're currently using for tracking all of that. We're still using Excel for the actual calculations or the Google Doc. I did put
to the yes, but Josh.
Yes. One more thing. I did put a link to the MIRO board if anybody wants to link and go look at it. It is this actual presentation if you want to look at it. And since we've already presented, there's nothing you can do to damage it.
I've got another MIRO question. I think it was Aaron had mentioned you placed the constraint log within the MIRO board.
Yes.
Did you actively update it within MIRO, or how were you actually kind of process-wise tracking those constraints?
So MIRO has the ability to link a Google Doc within the actual MIRO board. Excuse me. You have a source button that you hit on the weekly work plan or the constraint log, and that would take you directly to the Google Sheet where your constraint log can be updated. And then you do need to hit like a refresh or a renew button for all of the data to refresh. But that's how you do it. And then Dennis, to your question on the yes but, the yes buts do count in the PPC calculation. They do count as a completion. The yes but would be a constraint that is a yes but would be anything that we did accomplish the work that week, but it wasn't to the commitment. Either there were too many manpower, too little manpower. Maybe a piece of equipment arrived late, or we were waiting on an ASI or further additional information. Even though there was a constraint that week, we were still able to accomplish the task. And so that is what that yes but means.
Dean McCormick has a question, and it's a good one. So I've reshared my screen. He's asking about the consolidation through standardization. I can't always read very well. So as a company, we have standards that we try to have on every single project, but we also try to have the autonomy that people can make improvements on their individual job and then share it with the team, similar to how we shared that we did a pull plan in the MIRO board. We're the only project so far that's done that. So you get back together and you share that, and then you consolidate all those ideas and make a new standard that you push out to all of your different projects, which continues you as a company continue to improve. And that also allows the projects to make improvements on their own that might work for them. And they still have the ability to do that, but they have to follow the new standard that's set forth as well. Does that answer your question, Dean?
Yes, thanks.
We still have time for more questions. It's about 9 minutes left.
You guys have some really good questions. I appreciate them.
Oh, Josh, is there an intention within the entire organization to use the virtual boards, or is that still you're the pilot project?
So like Aaron showed, there are like 6 projects that are currently using it. We have probably 30 to 40 going on. There are certain size projects that we don't use it or see a reason to use it. I would say on our fast and fresh projects, they go so quick. By the time you get everyone trained, there's some downside. I think, as I said before, as we move through COVID and as people become more and more comfortable through vaccinations or through ability, I guess, to get together, I still think there's some benefit in being together. But having that additional digital aspect, we have not said is you have to. It's still more an optional, but you have to do the weekly work plans and the weekly planning either on a board or digitally.
Josh, have you considered how to handle your long distance vendors like refrigeration, freezers who are out of state and never show up, just doing a hybrid poll plan?
Yes, I think Zoom's probably here to stay because of those reasons and having them participate in a manner. The benefit that I've found to MIRO is you can do it on your phone, you can do it on your iPad or tablet, you can do it on a computer. You type into it, which takes away the handwriting that you can't read. Pat didn't mention it when we were practicing. He brought it up though. For those that have done poll plans for a long period of time, it used to be a big long piece of paper with sticky notes that you had to tape to make sure that they didn't fall out. And then the project manager would roll it up and shove it into his car and take it to the office and then retype a whole schedule based on those milestones that people had talked through. With it being digitally, it's there, it's saved. You can go back to that conversation at any time and say, hey, here's what we talked about, here are the commitments we made, and you don't have to risk them falling off or not being able to read it because they're there.
I have one more question, Josh. When you have the virtual poll plan and everyone's agreed, are you still manually entering that into any kind of CPM software?
We are still currently doing so. I think it's probably just a comfort thing. I know, and Dean, I'm going to point you out, walking on up in Ames at that high school project and seeing how they're not having a set schedule and they're doing it all off the boards really opened my mind to it, but I know I'm still holding on to it. But so right now, yes, but it has become over the years more and more milestone based as opposed to individual task based. There's a question, Pat, I think you should answer it, and I'll share my screen so you can see the whole MIRO board at one time.
Yeah, so there's a question in the chat that says, is being forced to set all the air handlers in advance of the roof installation creating more rework or impact the project schedule? No, it really didn't. What it did was it got the roofing subcontractor on site several times before, and also when they were here doing the roof curbs, they'd done some other work and spent their time on site productively. One of the reasons we did not want to set the units on the ground is because we didn't want anybody getting into them and messing them up by trying to steal copper, so on and so forth. So it was paramount to get the curbs dried in, and it really only sits on the top lip. So going back as the roof is laid up, they're able to do their makeup at the bottom of the roof curb once the insulation is brought up. So it didn't cause any rework at all, and it let our units get set as they came off the truck rather than hit the ground.
So here is the full board that has everything. It just keeps on going and going and going. You can see all the different things that we have on the board. The poll plans that we talked about are all on the board. You just zoom into the section that you want to have the conversation about. If you're in a meeting, you can grab the sticky note and you can move it to where you need it to go, and you can type in it, and you can see Pat's moving around at the same time, and Aaron could get on, or anybody could get on at the same time and be moving their sticky notes all together. It definitely, from a documentation and a site logistics, has kind of cleaned up some of our walls because everything's all right here digitally as opposed to. Jose has a question. With all the procurement delays, it appears that a lot of critical conversation with Hy-Vee leadership trade partners were placed on the project team. Do you have any insight on approaching these conversations? Oh, good question. I think this is where we benefit at being a part of the Hy-Vee team. I guess we are Hy-Vee employees, so going and having the conversation with other Hy-Vee personnel, and Hy-Vee's equipment is buying a lot of the pieces. So it helped that when we brought the roofing conversation about delay, that 2 weeks later, the cooler boxes had the same delay. So it didn't feel like you were just in crazy town talking about a roofing delay and everyone saying, I can't believe it. From if I wasn't part of the ownership team and having the conversation, I think there have been a lot of news articles about it, supplier memos are about it, reaching out to other people you've worked with and confirming. I know we did a lot of that. I would guess that every single owner is going to have their own reaction to it. I don't know if that really answers your question. Being a part of the team and being a partner really helped ease, I guess, our conversation.
Well, it's 9:00. I want to thank everyone with Hy-Vee and Josh, your team, for preparing this great presentation. And we hope to see you next month at our next Lean Construction Institute Greater Des Moines Community of Practice meeting. So watch our LinkedIn page and watch your inbox for invites for next month's meeting. Thank you for attending, and we appreciate your support.